I'm Susan Sharp Campbell, Associate for Educational Ministry for the Presbytery of West Virginia, and this video is meant to be an orientation and overview of the fall stated meeting of the Presbytery, which will take place on Thursday, November 21st at First Presbyterian Church, Fairmont, and on Zoom, and will begin at 10 a.m. The hybrid option for this meeting will enable those who are not able to be physically present to fully participate with the opportunity to take part in discussions, ask questions, and vote. But your patience is appreciated as you are acknowledged. Because of the concern of a loss of internet connection, those joining by Zoom will not count toward a quorum for the meeting. If you're attending in person, please check the parking directions that were sent in the email with the advance packet. And plan to arrive at the church between 9 and 10 in the morning so that you'll have time to check in, pay for lunch, turn in your mission project supplies of toilet paper, paper towels, multi-surface cleaner, and toilet bowl cleaner for Hope Inc., which provides resources and services to victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and human trafficking, and then enjoy a time of fellowship and refreshments. If you're joining by Zoom, you'll be able to join beginning at 9:30 a.m. When you do join by Zoom, please be sure that your name shows on the screen. That really helps those taking attendance note your presence. The advanced packet of materials for this meeting, including the docket, agenda, and written reports, was emailed to our newsletter mailing list on Monday, November 11th, and can also be found at www.wvpresbytery.org. You will notice that this packet is quite lengthy. I encourage you to read all of it in advance of the meeting, but I would encourage you not to print all of it. Instead, download it to your tablet or phone so you can access it during the meeting. If you won't be able to have it on a device with you during the meeting, all recommendations and the liturgy for worship will be projected. If you'd like to have a printed copy of the packet available for you, if you will call 304-744-7634 or email office@wvpresbytery.org no later than Monday, November 18th, one will be waiting for you when you check in. If you're joining by Zoom, however, you may want to print the agenda pages and worship pages to make it easier to follow along and participate. Either way, I encourage you to become familiar with what is on the agenda for the meeting. This video isn't meant to replace a reading of the packet, just to hit the highlights. As we gather and make decisions at this meeting, we do so trusting that God's Spirit will be moving in our midst as we seek to discern God's future for us. So please come ready to listen for what God may be saying to us in the voices we hear, and come with an open mind and a heart rather than your mind already made up as to how you will vote. Now, if you haven't done so already, I encourage you to download the advanced packet to the device you'll be using during the meeting so that you can follow along as I walk through the docket. In the packet, you'll find 3 sections: the docket with the agenda and written reports with recommendations and information in them from the various entities of the Presbytery, the worship bulletin, with information about worship leaders and resources at the end of the bulletin, flyers on upcoming events in the Presbytery. You'll see that several items on the docket have an asterisk beside them. These indicate that they are orders of the day, and we will move to them at the time indicated. At 10 a.m., Don Adamy, Mater of the Presbytery, will call the meeting to order and lead us in an opening prayer. Evan Walker, pastor of First Presbyterian Church, Fairmont, will then bring greetings from the host church. Next up will be some initial items of business. These include the introduction of the new chaplain at Davis and Elkins College, the seating of corresponding members, which means giving ministers of word and sacrament from other presbyteries who present at this meeting voice, or the ability to speak at this meeting, the recognition of ruling elders for whom this is their first presbytery meeting as a commissioner, the announcement of a presence of a quorum. The quorum for this meeting is 15% of our churches represented by an in-person ruling elder, or 18, and 15% of in-person minister members, or 16. Once quorum is established, the docket for the day, which can be found on pages 1 and 2 of the advance packet, will be approved. This will be followed by the consent agenda. The consent agenda on page 3 includes items that those planning the meeting identify as not likely to generate discussion. However, if anyone wishes to discuss an item found there, the request can be made to remove a particular item and it will be discussed later in the meeting. Items on the consent agenda for this meeting are approval of request for excused absences, and that the offering received during worship be sent to the Presbyterian Hunger Program. You'll find more information about this in the Mission Committee report. The moderator will then appoint temporary clerks. These are folks who will count any votes other than voice votes and pass out anything that needs to be distributed during the meeting. The Committee on Bills and Overtures for the meeting will consist of those members of the leadership team who are in person. They will take up any new business and make a recommendation on it at the beginning of the meeting, at the end of the meeting. Please note that any new business to be introduced must be given to the stated clerk in writing prior to the lunch break. Worship will follow this initial business. You'll find the worship bulletin following page 104. Again, those on Zoom may wish to print it out to make it easier to participate. We will be celebrating the sacrament of the Lord's Supper during worship, so I encourage those who are on Zoom to have some sort of bread and beverage with you so you can participate more fully. Please note that all bread in the sanctuary will be gluten-free. Toward the end of the bulletin, you'll find information on how to contribute to the offering other than contributing as the offering plate is passed. Please be sure to include November Presbytery meeting on the memo line, whether contributing in person, by mail and check, or online and credit card. At the conclusion of worship, there'll be several announcements, including one about the Presbyterian Youth Triennium in July of 2025, and Festival of Faith on March 22nd, 2025. The educational focus will be next. This is a regular part of every Presbytery meeting, and on this date it will be led by members of the leadership team. This will be an opportunity to hear and explore the results of the Presbytery's season of discernment, outlining a vision for the Presbytery for the next several years. Following the introduction of the plan, there will be small group time for conversation and questions. You will find the full report, including the report of the Holy Cow consultant Emily Swanson, and a summary of the report immediately following the written report of the leadership team on page 10 in the advance packet. Following the educational focus, we will break for lunch. Again, if you have an item of new business, please be sure that the stated clerk has this in writing before you go to lunch. After lunch, we'll be called back to order with prayer by the moderator and resume the business of the day. The first item after lunch will be the report of Maureen Wright as the stated clerk. You will find her written report on pages 4 through 6. The recommendation regarding excused absences will most likely have been approved on the consent agenda. You'll also find information on correspondence received regarding the St. Mary's Presbyterian Church Legacy Scholarship, the list of churches whose 2023 session records have now been reviewed, and the rolls and registers of the Presbytery, which is required to be completed annually. On page 6 of the advance packet, you'll find information about special procedural matters related to electronic meetings. And on page 7, you'll find the procedural matters that guide us as we meet together. Section A lifts up principles of parliamentary law. These include courtesy to all, one item at a time, majority rule, respect the rights of the minority, justice for all and partiality for none. These are all ways to show respect for one another as we seek to discern where God is leading us and we make decisions. In general, these are guidelines for how to work and play well with others as we gather in community. As items are discussed, pro and con speakers will alternate, with individuals being asked to identify their position. When one person has spoken on a pending question, all others wishing to speak will be heard before that person can speak a second time. Please note that it takes special permission for anyone to speak on the same question more than twice. Section B contains provisions from the Presbytery's manual that guide us, including who has voice at this meeting, meaning who has the privilege to speak, and then also who has voice and vote. Section C sets forth the procedural rules we follow. These include everyone speaking for whatever reason needs to go to a microphone, and when called on by the moderator, share their name, church, or relationship to the presbytery. Please do not assume that everyone can hear you from where you sit, or that everyone knows who you are. If you're on Zoom and wish to speak, you'll need to raise your hand or electronic hand or put your question in the chat. Here you will find that the limitation for debating any motion is 30 minutes per main motion, with each speaker limited to 3 minutes per speech, although this part must be approved by 2/3 of those voting on the 21st. I encourage you that if as you read the packet you see an item you feel called to speak to, write your remarks out in advance so you can stay focused and use your time wisely. On page 8, you'll find information on motion basics as we follow Robert's Rules of Order's parliamentary procedure. Maureen will then report as the transitional general presbyter. We will then move to the reports of the leadership team and presbytery committees. We'll be voting on the recommendations in these reports, and because they come from a team or a committee, they do not need a second. The leadership team will be bringing the recommendation to approve the strategic plan for the presbytery for the next 3 to 5 years. This was reviewed in the educational focus. You'll find the full report on pages 12 to 39, with a shorter summary on pages 40 to 48. If you find you don't have time to read the full report in advance, please do plan to read the summary report before you arrive. As you may be aware, all councils of the church are now required to have 4 policies: a sexual misconduct policy, a harassment policy, a child and youth protection policy, and an anti-racism policy. The leadership team will be recommending approval of revisions to our sexual misconduct policy, which is on pages 49 to 56, and revisions to the child protection policy, which can be found on pages 57 to 75. An anti-harassment policy will be on first reading. It can be found on pages 76 to 78. We adopted an anti-racism policy at the August meeting. The leadership team also recommends members to serve on the Committee on Representation, which serves as our nominating committee, so that it doesn't nominate its own members. You'll find their recommendations for members and a chair for the Committee on Representation in recommendations 3 and 4 in their report. You will see in the information section of the leadership team's report the ongoing work of the committee since the last Presbytery meeting. The Presbytery of West Virginia is part of the Synod of the Trinity, which consists of 14 presbyteries in Pennsylvania, West Virginia Presbytery, and Upper Ohio Valley Presbytery. Elizabeth Campbell Maleke and Jim Wilson are our Synod commissioners. On page 79, you'll find their report from their time at the annual assembly of the Synod that took place last month. In addition, Elizabeth will be making an oral report. Next will be good news from the pews. This is a time for ruling elder commissioners to this meeting to share one way in which their congregation is engaged in ministry and mission, so that those from other churches might gain ideas to take back to their own congregations and sessions. So if you are your session's ruling elder commissioner for this meeting and would like to share, please be prepared to do so. And again, remember to identify yourself and direct your remarks to the moderator using a microphone. Please note that this is not meant to be an opportunity to advertise upcoming events. The Committee on Representation has continued to work diligently to identify those willing to be nominated to serve on various committees of the Presbytery, as well as an ordination exam reader. You'll find the report of those they will be nominating at this meeting on page 80. As with all nominations, there will be the opportunity to make nominations from the floor for any of these positions. But be aware that before placing someone's name in nomination, they must have agreed in advance to serve if elected. Committee on Ministry reports next. You'll find their report on pages 81 to 84. They're bringing 3 recommendations which have to do with the appointment of 3 administrative commissions. Rock Forge Presbyterian Church in Morgantown and Trinity Presbyterian Church in Shady Spring have requested to be dissolved. The recommendations include the responsibilities and powers of these administrative commissions. The remaining administrative commission will be working with Second Presbyterian Church's session regarding its life, ministry, and vitality. The recommendations there also set forth the work of this commission. Committee on Ministry report also provides information on the ongoing work of the committee in appointing moderators, liaisons, and mentors, approving covenants and terms of call for pastoral leaders, meeting with new and retiring pastors, and transferring membership of ministers who have moved. At the conclusion of their report, ruling elder Erica Layton will be commissioned to pastoral service as the commission pastor at First Presbyterian Church of Concord. The primary purpose of the Board of Trustees of the Presbytery is to manage the property of the Presbytery in order to further the ministry and mission God has entrusted into our hands. As you will see in their report on page 85, they have been working on several property concerns and are recommending the sale of the property of the former Ruffner Memorial Presbyterian Church in Charleston. At the August meeting, the Stewardship Committee was tasked with establishing a fund to assist churches with the cost of enrolling a family member in the Transitional Pastors Package of the Board of Pensions Medical Plan. At this meeting, the Stewardship Committee is bringing a recommendation that a portion of the new life grant funds be used to do so. You'll find this in their report on page 86. You'll also find information about the ongoing work of the committee as it reviewed third quarter financial reports, the financial audit report, and considered concerns around the transfer of investment funds to the New Covenant Trust Company, which was approved at the August meeting. As part of the Stewardship Committee's report, Chris Alford, Financial Administrator and Treasurer of the Presbytery, will review the third quarter financials, which can be found on pages 87 to 97. The report of the Administration Committee can be found on page 98. They are bringing recommendations regarding Mark Miller serving as the 2025 Summer Camp Director and using additional funds to increase pay for certain staff members, the same as occurred in 2024. The committee is also recommending that Juneteenth on June 19th be a staff holiday. In the information section, you'll find mention of other matters related to the Presbytery staff. Several committees have only written reports for this meeting. The Bluestone Committee report, which can be found on page 99, has information regarding recent events at Bluestone and the swimming pool filtration system situation. It also contains the dates for summer camp in 2025, which will also be found in the camp brochures that Mark Miller, Facilities and Summer Camp Director, will be distributing at this meeting. Please note these dates and share them with children, their parents, and grandparents in your congregation. The report of the Mission Committee can be found on page 100. Their recommendation regarding the worship offering at this meeting will most likely have passed on the consent agenda. You'll also find in their report that they continue to receive and review grant applications for the Hunger Grant and the Mission Grant. Please note that if your congregation has received one of these grants for $2,000 in the past 12 months, it is eligible for an additional $1,000 grant. The Nurture Committee on page 101 provides information on their work and their plans for future events for nurturing faith in people of many ages. You will note there that the Resource Center can be accessed in person or online, and materials can be delivered or mailed to those who wish to borrow them. You'll also find a display of materials from the Resource Center at this meeting that are ready to be checked out. The Relations Committee, whose report is on page 102, continues to make triennial visits and phone calls to churches. If you'd like for your church to have a visit, please contact Committee Chair Margaret Bolt, whose contact information is at the bottom of the report. You'll also find that they continue to offer ministry collaboration, also known as cluster support grants, for congregations in our presbytery who join with other Presbyterian congregations in joint mission. The Vocations Committee reports on page 103. They continue to oversee the Authorized Lay Preacher Commission Pastor Preparation Program as it enters its second year. They are in the process of examining all those who completed the previous program in September, some of whom have already received calls to serve as commissioned pastors. Vocations Committee also continues to support those who are seeking to become ministers of Word and Sacrament, as well as collecting outstanding loans from the Rachel McClinic Fund. At the end of all the committee reports, if any new business was submitted, it will be addressed. If there's no new business, the meeting will be adjourned with a benediction by the moderator. Please remember, however, that your work as a commissioner to this meeting does not end with the benediction. Please don't forget to report to your session what took place and to share the information in the packet, including the flyers, with those in your congregation who might be interested. In the final section of the advance packet, following the worship bulletin, you'll find flyers on upcoming events. Please share these flyers and the information in them with those in your session and congregation who might be interested. The flyers for this meeting are topics, dates, and leaders for the 3 Expanding Your Ministry Toolbox courses in 2025. Complete information and a registration form for Get Better at Dealing with Difficult People on Saturday, January 18th on Zoom from 9 a.m. to noon. I suspect there are a lot of us who could use help with this. Complete information and a registration form for Pastoral Care with the Dying and their loved ones on Zoom on Saturday, March 1st. Please remember that pastoral care does not mean that it's the responsibility only of the pastor, because elders and deacons are also, as well as members, called to carry out pastoral care for members of the congregation and friends of the congregation. The dates of Bluestone Summer Camp in 2025, and Presbyterian Youth Training for youth currently in grades 8 through 12, young adults ages 19 to 23, and folks who are interested in being adult advisors. With the flyer for Triennium, there is also a registration form. I look forward to seeing you in Fairmont or on Thursday, November 21st.